It is just not viable to be a landlord anymore here in Vancouver, from the continuing drop in rental rates to the province dipping their hands into all the policies, making it very difficult for a landlord to have control. The quality of tenants has gone down, property taxes has gone up, mortgage interest has gone up, all these other items, including strata fees, insurance, that the bottom line for investors here in Vancouver are in a landscape that are not something that they want to be a part of. My top clients right now are a lot of investor or former investor clients who are now offloading a lot of their rental properties. Some don't even care if they are selling at a loss because they are done being a landlord here in Vancouver. And I know for some of you, depending on which way the ledger you stay in, you may be cheering that, you want to take it to the man, but what you don't understand is that a lot of these mom and pop investors, not these corporations that own tens or 20s or hundreds of units, but people that own one or two, maybe three units, they're the ones who supplied a lot of housing to a lot of renters out there, have been great landlords, given great opportunities out there. Those people are disappearing very, very quickly, and that is not a place that we want to stay here. There's also the data that's coming in showing that there's such a rise in these purpose-built rentals as well, with condo construction coming down, purpose-built rentals shooting off the charts, that renters right now, it's a great time to be in this type of environment. You have a ton of selection, and that again goes against the bottom line for landlords here in Vancouver. So if you're a landlord or thinking of wanting to be a landlord, stay tuned for this video. We're going to go through some of the charts in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the rental rates, some of my own stories, as I am someone who has multiple properties and my experience going through this, and if it makes sense for you to get into the market, or if you're possibly thinking of offloading, make sure you book a discovery call. It's in the description below. But here we go. We're going to bring in some data here, and the first data point here is the annual change in average asking rent, and this is going back to April 2024, and this is all property types, and this is all across Canada, so we can see how the rest of the country is working on a macro level and get a little bit more micro in Vancouver as a whole. So as you can see, going back a year, this starts at April 2024, we're about a 9.3% in terms of what we're seeing in annual changes in average asking rent. But as we soon got into the fall, you can see that it was a pretty steep decline. We went from a peak of 9.3% in terms of annual changes all the way down to a 4.8% back in February of 2025. So we're talking about almost a 14-point change, which is very, very dramatic. And it's exactly to some of these points that I was saying to you before. A lot of people are wanting to get out of their rentals, purpose-built rentals and units available in and around Vancouver specifically. I think there's around 20,000 more units, purpose-built rentals, that are going to be accessible to Vancouverites here in Vancouver. But this is some of the things that have led to why these rents have dropped. We also know that the government of Canada has put a stop to non-permanent residences, and those are the bulk of the individuals who take up these rental markets across Canada too. So those non-permanent immigration numbers have been dropping like a rock, and that is also why there's a lot more vacancies here across Canada. When we look at the next chart here, average asking rent for Canada's sixth largest market, this goes back a year earlier to April of 2023. Vancouver here is in the top line, a dark blue, and you can see that we're doing pretty good in the midway part of 2023, and we've been on a pretty steady decline underneath here. This is for purpose-built and condo apartments specifically, and you can see that it's been on a downward trajectory essentially since September of 2023. We've had a little bit of an uptick, but on average across Vancouver, the average rental rate now is at $2,836, still the highest here in the country, but obviously our rents are going to be higher just because the property pricing is high. I know a lot of people want to demonize landlords because rental is so high, but many people forget that they have all the risk and the cost. Mortgage rates, a lot of investors usually like to go variable. They like to roll the dice a little bit. That's why they're in the investor field already. Property taxes have skyrocketed. All these other costs have skyrocketed as well. And that's how they have to recoup their costs. And because BC has such a harsh cap on terms of how much you can raise rent every single year, and there was a pause over COVID. They do have to set themselves a little bit of a buffer because even if nothing goes wrong with the tenancy in terms of damage after, and if you've had a good tenant, if you're owning a condo or a home, there is going to be maintenance on the property that you have to put money aside for to complete and to finish to make sure that your tenant has a great quality of life. And then in the third graph here, the annual change in average asking rent for the 6 largest markets. This is for purpose-built and condo rental apartments in April 2025. You can see Vancouver here on the far left. This is a drop of 4.9%. Calgary actually had a massive drop off here at 8.9%, which is pretty shocking. But Vancouver and Toronto here sitting pretty neck and neck. Toronto at 5.5% and Vancouver at 4.9%. So in the conditions where we are, where interest rates and all these other items that I mentioned are going up, and then you're seeing these losses here, it's not very appetizing for people to want to put themselves out there to get a tenant. I know for myself, my last 2 tenants that I've had in 2 of my rentals, I had to take both of them to arbitration for property damage. A lot of tenants out there seem to have this viewpoint that if you own property here in Vancouver, you're a multi-millionaire, and it's just not true. Most investors, most people who have multiple properties, we don't own it. It's the bank. The bank owns the majority of my properties. I've been able to leverage items to get into these positions, but it's not me who has it. I'm not a multi-millionaire. I can't, pick up the slack when you damage all my kitchen cabinetry, or you damage the cabinetry in my bathroom, or you damage appliances. These are costs that come out. And there's more and more of these stories that are coming out. I know that, upwards of up until, 2 years ago, never had any issues, had wonderful relationships with tenants. And it's just been the last 2 months. And I think that everybody, landlords and renters included, are under such financial pressure and financial stress that everyone is so inner focused and not so much outer focused anymore. And as I mentioned off the top, with so many of my clients wanting to be out of their rentals and even willing to sell at a loss, really should give you pause if you're thinking of becoming a landlord here in Vancouver. I know with some of my clients, I speak to them about my own personal stories and what other clients have gone through. And with what the stock market can do, and with property pricing essentially dropping and staying at a flat line, you likely will get a better rate of return in the stock market, to be totally honest. It may not be the realtor thing to say, but if you have a chunk of money and you're willing to put it down on a property, you may be better doing it in the stock market at this point. You may be able to get a really good buy, but I think first and foremost, focus in on your principal residence first. You want to have some sort of tax shelter. But if you are thinking of just getting a rental and you're still renting yourself, I would really put a pause on that and just really think through all the pros and cons of getting into something like that. If you are already in the market and you're taking advantage of that tax haven with your principal residence, then I think there can be a conversation made. But I also think you should be including other professionals such as a financial advisor to see what your rate of returns are, because we know that the properties as a whole, they have not been performing well. But on the flip side of that, you could look at it as an opportunity where you could get something into at a better price point. So that could make you a little bit more cash positive and have some more growth for appreciation. But keep in mind that once you have a tenant in there, you are married to them, because once you sign that tenancy agreement, unless you want to move in yourself, you are tied to that tenant. And even if you want them out and you do everything right, there are many cases where you still can't get access back into your own unit. So this is not to scare you. This is just to share with you what's really going on here. And in a previous video that I just shared, just talking about developers not even being able to rent out their own units and deciding to sell them at a 25% discount. That should really give you some clarity in terms of how you want to move forward. When developers who are doing this at mass scale are not even wanting to entertain that because they can't rent them out, or it's too much of a hassle and they're willing to take a 25% cut on their units. Also, with a lot of the majority of my clients, as well as other realtors that I speak to, having their investor clients wanting to get out of town as well, that is something that you should really look into. But this is what I have for you today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.